Kia ora tātou, tēnā koutou ki ngā iwi mana whenua o te tau ihu. Tēnā koe Bruce, tēnā koe Craig mō te kōrero, no Debs Martin ahau, no whakatua hau, tēnā tātou katoa. Greetings everyone. I just want to say, acknowledging your presence here, especially if you've travelled. I want to acknowledge also the mana whenua, the iwi of this place, and also to those that have organised this, and for Craig for coming to speak on behalf of the co-op. So I'm here, I have just been elected the chairperson of the Nelson Organic Co-op. We've just had a change in our board directorship. And so I'm really happy to be here today, and I just want to acknowledge Teresa, who's going to be talking with me, and Denise, who's another of our board directors. And there may be members of the co-op here, but we don't know everyone's faces. So essentially, why the Nelson Organic Co-op, and why have we proceeded with what we've done? Well, I think Bruce has already alluded to it. I mean, this has been something that has been spoken of for a number of years, to actually turn the wonderful sector of organics into something that can be affordable, resilient and accessible to everyone in the community. So obviously organics is a growing sector. Even more recently, I mean, my 21-year-old daughter now won't hardly touch anything unless it's organic, raw and vegan pretty much. So we know that there's a groundswell within the younger people who recognising some of the toxicity of the food in our environment and some concerns around that. But it's not a new thing. I mean, organics is actually the way that most food has been grown around the world forever. And it's only recently that organics is seen to be a kind of radical fringe, and in fact organics is the norm. So I have got a pointer, but it's always much easier to hit the computer. So this is a lovely pen and pencil drawing of the Nelson Organic Greengrocer, and the present owners had, well, not the present owners, although they still are part of the co-op. The Masons, Sue and Seeger Mason, had been particularly involved in the store for 23 years and wanted to retire back onto their land so that they could do what they loved, which was to grow organic food. So they offered it up for sale, and for a while there it looked like it was going to go through a normal sale, but at the same time the customers of the shop wanted it to continue, and so Sue and Seeger were actually instrumental in calling together the customers and saying, how about, would you be interested in purchasing this as a cooperative? Now, a lot of people did, because that store for many people is the cornerstone of organics in Nelson, having been around for so long. So led by a model which was the Harbour Co-op in Littleton, which arose from the ashes of the Christchurch earthquake and purchased Littleton's Little Pico. You know, Pico Whole Foods in Christchurch, there's Little Pico in Littleton. And the Harbour Co-op, which was a group of member families, really wanted to bring from the earthquake destruction the organic cooperative back in Littleton again. And there was so much going on in Christchurch and with the main Pico store that the Little Pico in Littleton was being left behind. So the Harbour Co-op stepped in, purchased the business and set it up. So we were led a little bit by their initiative, but obviously in a totally different situation. We also looked, interestingly enough, to another model, which was farmlands. A number of us are rurally based and have belonged to farmlands for a number of years, and we knew that that was a consumer-owned cooperative as well. So we were looking at the kind of organic sector cooperative alongside these kind of larger models. Now, to be honest, I wish I'd known about New Zealand Co-op back then that Craig presented of. We didn't. Seriously wish we had, because that booklet that Craig showed you, that big one, would have probably saved us a lot of hassle in the beginning, I think, and would have been really, really helpful. So if you are thinking about cooperative, I'd strongly urge you to pick up and utilise that material. There were a lot of legal complexities. I think someone raised before, you know, what's the difference between a non-profit? We looked at Industrial Providence Society. But essentially we operate mainly under two acts. The Companies Act, which of course we are a limited liability company, and also the Co-operative Companies Act as well. which actually leverages a whole lot of extra, we believe, a whole lot of extra financial reporting, auditing requirements onto cooperatives. And I just want to acknowledge the work that Craig and New Zealand Co-op, and actually we put in our own little wee submission as well, to get some changes around that to make it easier, as Craig said, for smaller cooperatives to actually progress without being tied down by so many kind of structures, which are put in place for good reason. They're put in there to protect, to protect consumers and to protect investors. But in the case of small companies where you pretty much know each other face to face, some of that was really over the top and was going to cost us substantial money every year in terms of the auditing requirements. So thanks very much for that, Craig and New Zealand Co-op, for that work on that. This is our fantastic shop. If you haven't been in there, you really should go in there. This is my little pitch for people. We're looking to grow our ownership of the shop all of the time, Our encouragement around the shop is for people to come in. It's a really colourful place, it's vibrant, it offers great products. We range in things from, juices to frozen goods to dried goods to, and we even have a lovely organic cafe, which is actually the only truly organic cafe operating in Nelson. So if you want good organic lunch food, whip down and taste some of Miko's cooking. But it brings together there's this lovely feeling about the kind of old shop feel that people really love about coming into the Nelson Organic Greengrocer, at the same time as providing goods. So that's us, that's our shop. We went ahead and we purchased the shop at the end of April last year, and it's a real learning curve for us, and I think we were feeling quite disheartened, particularly as a board, that we just weren't getting on top of things. And then we had someone come along to a board meeting and said, holy heck, where you guys are at in a year, we took 8 years to get to. So we were feeling kind of boosted a bit by that, coming from someone in Wellington, which of course is the fast-paced capital of New Zealand. But the vision is developed by our cooperative members and is upheld by the board. How many members I'll get on to that. I'll get on to that in a moment if you bear with me. I'll just tell you now, we've got 117 household member families who own the store. And I'll tell you about how that's structured shortly. So the shareholders come together, the shareholder members, and we built together this vision. So this is our vision, that we're a vibrant part of our organic future, Nelson's Organic Future, and that we want to provide a model of it's really important for us that this isn't just a business, but that we're known to be a cooperative, we're out there as being a cooperative, and that inspires others to kind of follow a similar model, whether it be a consumer or a worker cooperative or any type of cooperative. The values was something we picked up. So as we talked about these, we talked about what kind of values did we want to promulgate, and so these are the ones that we've come up with. We wanted to kind of have something where we go to people, we are do. This is the values we encompass, and this is who and what we want to be. And to do that, to achieve our vision and uphold our values, this is a bit of a condensed down kind of 5 bullet points as to how we'll do that. So obviously a core part of that is running the business. We want to provide that strength and resilience to the local community. Particularly we want to offer opportunities for small producers to be able to sell their organic products, as well as obviously providing outlets and strengthening the local economy in that way. Employment is really important to us, and that's always a challenge because employment is a significant overhead. So it's kind of making that balance between making enough money and also providing fair and equitable employment. We want to engage in a strategy of change towards this kind of cooperative, locally owned community ownership around businesses. And we're really keen to cooperate with others who share these kind of principles. So we have yummy things in store. Pop in, eat some apples. That's all I wanted to say there. And these are obviously apples that are given to us as a part of that. So how are we structured and operated? What we did was we had a share issue when we first decided we wanted to do this, and we opened it up, and I mean there's all sorts of legal complexities involved. Essentially we had a deadline date that we had to raise a certain amount of funds through the sale of shares. So every household could purchase one share, and this is the kind of model that the Harbour Co-op had used. 365. In other words, $1 a day. For $1 a day for a year, you can own this business and you can be a part owner of this business. Then we also knew that that wasn't necessarily going to get us where we're at, because you know, if we had 100 members, that's only 36,500, which was about the cost of the stock. So we also had additional shares. You had to be a household shareholder, but you could buy preferential supporting shares. And for that, your shares were at a value of $1, and you could buy a minimum of 500. And then to fit with these new guidelines, we now have a maximum of 4,500, which means we keep all our investors are below $5,000. We have a governance structure that we put in place, which includes the shareholders, board, and we have, obviously, we employ staff, and we have a number of volunteers. Obviously, board members are volunteers, but we have a number of active volunteers in the shop as well. So what I'm wanting to do now is I'm going to hand it over to Teresa. Now, Teresa wasn't there while we were going through that purchasing phase, so she was, she comes to us fresh from actually joining the co-op once we kicked off. So I'm just going to hand it over to Teresa, and she's going to talk around the personal perspective of becoming involved in the co-op, and then I'll pick it back up again.
Sure, I'm glad I'm going to get this over with. It's quite a short thing, really. It had come to my husband's and myself's notice that we could purchase shares in the cooperative and be part of a like-minded community. Our background was firmly entrenched in organics from the time we purchased land in Mahana. We cleared an ex-forestry property and decided to put a vineyard on it. We registered with BioGrow New Zealand, and from that time on we were firmly entrenched in the process of composting and not using toxic chemicals. Bringing the land into a fertile state has been a long process. At present, we have planted large amounts of vegetables, which in the rows, my husband dug it all up to put vegetables in, and we had huge amounts of fruit trees, so we decided that we had got so much out of being part of the cooperative that we wanted to give something to the cooperative, and so we give our vegetables and fruits and that we take in. We do not want to be paid for it, but it makes us feel good about ourselves. It's who we are. We like to give freely to people and thus help the cooperative. My journey through becoming a member has been very interesting. The members are freely giving advice and support. I like the community feel that occurs when I visit the shop and purchase those products which I need. I was asked if I'd like to be a board member. I was quite daunted at first because I was not too sure what that entailed, especially being a new member. It has been a journey of learning about cooperatives, but what I have found is that one can be true to one's principles in the company of people who value those principles. That's it.
Thanks. Thanks for that, Teresa. It's really important, as you see, that we bring that whole kind of sense of community together as fundamental to what our cooperative is about. But there are challenges, and I've got to say the biggest challenge is, when you come into something new, there's that wave of enthusiasm. Everyone rides in on a wave of enthusiasm, and everyone says, yeah, I'll volunteer, and I'll come and do half a day, and I'll come and do this, and I'll do that. It's taken people like, Teresa and Bill who've stuck at it, Denise, who's been there from the very start, and there are a number of volunteers in the shop who have maintained their presence in the shop. But it's a real challenge in our kind of field to actually maintain that voluntary capacity. And that's not just in the shop, but it means that the board as well. I mean, when you offer your commitment to a board around a cooperative and your financial interest in it isn't huge, it's $365, there's a little bit of kind of sense of, you know, some people are committed and some people aren't. So it's easy for people to ride in on that wave of enthusiasm, but to maintain them and to have people on board's been a challenge. So that's an area we're looking at. Another thing that we're looking at is obviously getting expertise is really important, and board expertise is something that's important as well. But even with our volunteers, it's really good to have people who might be retired but they're good at bookkeeping, and we can help use that in terms of our back room. Or they've worked in the retail sector and they'd love to just have a half day a week, you know, up front interacting with customers. Those are things that we need to look for. That's our challenge. The retail sector is challenging in Nelson. I only need to walk down the street and see the number of start-up shops that shut again within a year or 2 years. And, you know, being a cooperative helps provide resilience, but we still actually have to make a shop work and make it viable. And part of that has been because we've been able to lean on the voluntary contribution of shareholders. But it is a challenge, and it is a challenge in any sector, I believe, to you know, to maintain that. And it's often in those first few years, our treasurer advises us that most businesses fold, so we're trying to dig in. The change for shop staff, from being owned by a manager who's in store to being suddenly owned by 117 household members. But those are things that are things I think we're moving through. Now, I've been told I've only got a minute or so left, which I kind of thought was about what my watch said. So the successes we do have, at the time of writing this, we had 115, but actually even in the last couple of weeks we're bringing new household members or shareholder members every week. Organics is more affordable. I mean, we have been able to bring the prices down, and that's been due to the really hard work of the staff. So we're actually delivering on our vision, which has been really important to us. And we're building a strong community, and that's something I think will continue to grow. We've got an increased range of products, and we raised the capital we needed for the purchase through a combination of household and supporting shares. So we're still here. We hope to still be here in a few years' time. And this is what we are really there to serve, which is the community of Nelson. And so thanks very much, and Teresa and I will be willing to answer any questions. Thank you.